Hi, I'm Babs Hogan, and welcome to Cheese Hangouts. I am at Ketocon 2018 in Austin, Texas, and I have an amazing guest, a man that I've been watching on YouTube and listening and learning from him, Dr. Peter Ballerstedt. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I understand that you're going to be speaking this afternoon, right?
Yes, ruminant reality check.
I have a surprise for you. We have some, after the interview, we're going to taste this Pedroso Dairy and Cheese Company Northern Gold cheese, cheese that Tim Pedroso sent me. Thank you, Tim. And then yesterday, my husband Dan and I went to Brazos Valley Cheese Company in Waco, just a little bit north of Waco, and got a Von Sorman, which is it's cinnamon, vanilla, and sorghum. It's so delicious. Dr. Ballerstedt is a ruminant specialist, and he is the speaker, and he talks all over the world about ruminants and the health of ruminants. So what is a ruminant?
Ruminants are those mammals that have multi-compartmented stomachs. So if you think of cows or sheep or goats or deer or any of the other...
Moose, elk.
Exactly.
Goat.
I think there's something like 150 species.
Oh, wow.
I think something like 40 of them have been domesticated. Mm-hmm. Most of the animals that humans have domesticated are in fact ruminants. Mm-hmm. And because they have this pre-gastric fermentation process, they can utilize high fiber, low quality feedstuffs and convert them then into meat and cheese and other products that are very important in humans' history as well as current diet.
Well, I've been studying the human gut microbiome, and in fact, it's chapter 1 in my book about the healthy benefits of cheese. And I know that in humans, the magic happens in the large intestine mostly, right? Mm-hmm. And so in animals, where does the magic happen in terms of the microbes?
It depends on the animal. So
Okay.
if it's a dog or a pig, they're going to be like us. They're going to have the acidic stomach,
Okay.
and then the large intestine and perhaps an enlarged cecum, where the post-gastric fermentation is going to take place. The problem then is how much of what's produced there can the host absorb from the large intestine. With a ruminant, the magic happens in the reticulorumen, and then either the volatile fatty acids that are produced as carbohydrate is converted into fat, that's absorbed through the rumen wall. At the same time, we have these bacteria and other microorganisms taking non-protein nitrogen and making microbial protein out of it, as well as other protein, that then when it gets to the stomach and the small intestine, the abomasum and the small intestine, you have the host animal digesting those organisms. So it's like they're farming these big colonies of microorganisms and then eating them or utilizing their byproducts.
In my research for my book, I noticed that all the grass-fed animals are producing great milk that is very and rich in CLAs.
Okay.
And can you tell me why?
Well, in part it's because of what's coming in their diet from fresh grass and then the anaerobic fermentation process, which would be different than some dry hay or silage and then other feeds that would be part of a mixed ration.
What is a silage? What kind of food is a silage?
Think of it as pickled grass. So you can, with the right conditions, chop the whole corn plant, for example, or alfalfa or grass, put it into an oxygen-limiting environment so you pack it tight, and if the moisture content is right, then it becomes anaerobic, and then you have fermentation that takes place in there until there's enough acid formed to keep that stable.
Okay.
And then that can be fed later in the year.
And do the farmers do that process themselves, or do they buy silage already done?
You could do both, but most dairymen, for example, are going to be producing silage on their own farms.
Okay.
You know, vitamin C is interesting because Amber O'Hearn pointed out, I'll make the statement today, there is no essential nutrient in the human diet that isn't provided by animal products. And in some cases, only through animal products. Now, I kind of sit back and wait for the audience to twitch, right? Because some are going to say fiber because somehow we've been led to believe that fiber is an essential nutrient, which is, I think, symptomatic of the problem we're in. But the other is vitamin C. And as has been pointed out, fresh meat cures scurvy.
Wow.
Well, that's interesting.
Wow. Fresh, any kind of meat? Or just
Fresh meat cures scurvy. So I'm going to say
must have vitamin
red
C in it.
meat. And unfortunately, the definition for red meat, I think, includes pork. So I'm going to go red meat. But the problem is that everyone, if you go to the food tables, right, and you look for vitamin C, if it's listed, for fresh beef, it's going to say 0, but if it's a really good table, there should be a footnote. And when you look for what that footnote says, it says assumed to be 0.
Tricky.
So they've not actually determined that it's 0. You know, so the more glucose in your diet, the more vitamin C you need.
Okay.
And so virtually everything that we know about human nutrition comes to us through the lens of carbohydrate-based diets. So that's, and then you can look at peoples from around the world that for whatever reason developed the pattern of eating animal product-based diets or sole animal product diets, and they didn't have scurvy.
Okay, your website and blog is Grass-Based Health, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you've been doing this for a few years, and I noticed that you go all over the world, and you just got back from Brazil, and et cetera, he's just everywhere. What do you, what's the message for them?
The summary for today's talk is what is a ruminant? To let people know that they were essential in the development of modern humans. So there wouldn't be modern humans without ruminants. There wouldn't be our modern societies without ruminants. And we won't be able to meet the needs of the world of 2050 without ruminants. Now, people in this audience we've just been listening to all the experts that I cite when I talk to audiences that aren't familiar with the nutrition. But many times people will get pushback about and then some concerns will be raised about animal agriculture. And what I want people to know is that just as we've come to question the nutritional conventional wisdom, the story of environmental conventional wisdom should be equally questioned. In many cases, it comes to us from the same sources. In many cases, it's part of the same narrative. And then they're used to justify each other. So today, you can find articles that say, if everyone stopped eating dairy and beef, then we could stop global warming and we'd save all these people from dying of heart disease. Well, the people in this audience know that the heart disease story is, bogus.
I come from a long history as a health professional, and I have been on that anti-fat wagon for many years.
Lipophobic.
Thank you,
Yeah.
exactly. And, it's really, when I read Nina Teicholz's book, The Big Fat Surprise, it turned me around, and some others, there've been a whole host of others. And the more I realized how wrong my message was, the more angry I became.
Absolutely. The books that were most important to me, in addition to Nina's excellent book, Gary Taubes' 3 books. Mike and Mary Dan Eads was the diet that I mostly followed when I started 10 years ago.
Protein Power?
Protein Power. I think it was the Protein Power Life Plan that I read. But and there have been others. You're always a little nervous when you list things because you don't want to imply the ones you didn't name weren't good. And I find myself positioned where I'm part of, I call them tribes. So I do operate in the agricultural tribe, and I very much want those people to know this health restoring message. Personal, community, industry, national implications, and now international. My eyes have been opened as a result of going to Brazil. And then I go to meetings like this and others, and I hear people say things that are demonstrably false. I know where it comes from. I've read it, I've heard it. And the danger there is you risk the credibility of what you're saying on the diet side by repeating things that for whatever reason you've picked up and are now part of what you're talking about. So I'm trying to introduce the two tribes together so that we can learn from each other, so that we can advance. I too got angry reading Good Calories, Bad Calories.
Yes.
And, you know, I've got a few lines like, you can tell when idols are being worshipped, human beings are being sacrificed.
Yes. I've heard
And that's at the end, at the, Dave Feldman yesterday talked about a child who had seizure disorder who was seeing benefit from going on a ketogenic diet, but the child's LDL cholesterol went up, and the physician that I'm not remembering what specialty they were, pushed these parents into getting the child off of that diet, which meant that the brain health deteriorated, seizures got worse. When you understand how weak the LDL cholesterol story is, then go look at this. We're told by people who want to argue against this kind of eating cheese, for example, or other ruminant animal products, that this is inefficient, that we should be eating the grain that the animals are fed instead of, well, leaving aside the health implications of eating grain, and they should be acknowledged.
Yes.
The simple point is that the majority of feed that this nation's ruminants eat, let alone worldwide, is unusable by human beings. So what the ruminant, as opposed to pork or poultry or fish production, the ruminant agriculture represents an increase in the human food supply. There's not competition. The majority of their feed is going to come from ground that cannot, should not grow crops that humans can utilize directly. And then you can start looking around the world and seeing the implication of this. So this is just one aspect of the kind of narrative that we've been subjected to over the years, that when you start pulling it apart, there's nothing there. But we need to deconstruct it so that people who come to understand that why butter, meat, and cheese belong in a healthy diet, they don't need to feel guilty about seeing their own health restored. Right? I will be given roughly 45 minutes to talk later today. In that time, 90 people somewhere in the world are going to lose a leg due to diabetes. So now talk to me about the balance here. Right? Exactly. 200 people today in the United States, due to standard of care of diabetes, are going to lose some part of their body. Okay, so, and then understand that it's not, I'll put quotes around just diabetes, because diabetes is a huge problem. But as Ivor Cummins and others are showing us, there is a plausible connection, if not causal link, between chronically elevated insulin and virtually every chronic disease you want to mention.
That's pretty much the theme of his new book, he and Dr. Gerber. Have you read that
Exactly
book?
so, yes.
Oh, okay. It may be the most important book of the decade, or maybe even more. But, you know, there's just amazing information. I want everybody to read that book, and we'll talk about that later, because Ivor's coming up. So, Dr. Ballerstedt, thank you so much, and are you ready to taste some really good cheese?
Absolutely.
Okay,